I hope you like punctuation, because this video is going to be punctuated by a lot of coughing, because I'm coming down off of a cold. But gotta record. Can't miss those upload times. So, how would I redesign the Bard? The Bard is an interesting thing. It's a whole, like, the history of the class is actually quite fascinating. I'm not going to go into it too much because honestly, I don't know it that well. But what I do know is that it's had a lot of iterations. There's been a lot of ideas about what the Bard is and specifically what the Bard is not. Now, I've said before in fairly public forums about how I think that the Bard should have more musical inspiration. You should utilize musical composition, musical theory, and incorporate these into the game mechanics. And inevitably, somebody says, hey, the Bard doesn't have to be a musician. Well, that's true. But what if it did, though? What if we did have a class that is based on music specifically, and not this sort of general idea of performance as a very, very broad concept? Because right now, I think what the problem with the Bard is that, and to be clear, as it is in 5e, the Bard is still an A-tier class. It is the very bottom of A-tier, but it is still A-tier. It is a full caster. It has tons of options. You're going to get a lot of value out of playing a Bard if you really know what you're doing, what you're looking for, and you really play into the strengths of the class. So I don't think the Bard is weak. I don't think it needs a buff, but I think the Bard suffers from a lack of identity. The Bard doesn't really know what it's about, because basically what it's about, and kind of what they're leaning into with 1D&D, is the Bard is about doing what other people do. It's about saying, I can do any of that as well or better than the people that I'm stealing the stuff from, in some cases, not universally. But yeah, basically the idea of the Bard as it exists in 5e is I do sort of vague performance, really non-committal to that idea. Like there's kind of a, because like you lean into the charisma, and not like charisma for a sorcerer, but charisma as it is for other characters. Yeah, that's one. Your ability to perform is kind of insinuated to be part of where your magic comes from. All right, so I frankly don't really like the idea of a class whose whole thing is taking other people's slices of the pie. I want a class to be focused on doing whatever it does fairly well. I think the Bard should have a mechanical identity of its own and not just steal from others. So that's one. Number two, I think the Bard should be a music caster. I think that because there isn't right now a class that is you do magic with music, and there's no real mechanical way to represent that. If I want a music caster, you would say play a Bard, and I would say, yeah, but the Bard doesn't really do anything with music because it doesn't focus on that part of the identity. It's such a minor and even optional thing, they can't incorporate it into the mechanics. So what I would do is I would have the Bard gain music as a core part of its identity. How would I do this? Well, the Bard should have a almost entirely unique set of spells. Its spells should all be crafted for the Bard because they're going to have certain mechanical constructs or mechanical aspects to them that interact with the Bard's class features. What are those class features? Well, I envision 3 sliders, 3 like tracks that you are on that each turn you are going to manipulate in some way. You have things like volume. You can rise and lower in volume. I believe that is crescendo and diminuendo. So based on certain circumstances, and I don't have... So this is all based on a vague concept that I came up with a long time ago. I never wrote any of this down, so I'm kind of doing this from memory. I had different ideas for how each of these tracks progresses. And I don't remember what any of them are. So things like one of them was definitely just like you adjust it every turn as you see fit. It goes up or down. I don't think that was this, or maybe it was this. I don't remember. I don't remember which one's which. Some of them are like whenever you cast a spell, you can advance on the track, and then the track would loop back around on itself. So it was a cycle. This crescendo and diminuendo would be back and forth. You would adjust up or down based on whatever circumstances it is. Fill in the blanks as you will. The higher you are on this track, the longer range your spells have. The lower, the more powerful they are, because louder means you can be heard from further away. Your music will literally affect things further away the louder you are. But as you get quieter, the music gets more powerful, more meaningful, more deeply felt. And so you would gain benefits. There would be a sort of general range modifier based on how high you are on the track. And then each individual bard spell would say like, you get X effect. And then if you are at this volume or lower, you get an additional effect. That kind of thing. Another thing would be melody. And melody is the one that loops. You can start over, but you cannot jump to any point in the melody. Otherwise, you can either start over or advance to the next part of the melody. And this, I had the idea of like, as long as you complete the melody, there's a cost reduction. I had it in mind, like the actual math about how it would work. But basically, you can cast, like, first you start with a first level spell, and then you advance your ability if you cast a second level spell, and then a third, and then a fourth. And as long as you keep going up by one spell level each turn, you don't have to expend the spell slot until the very last moment, the very last spell in the cycle. So if you go all the way up to 9th level, you only spend that 9th level slot, as long as you have spent the last 8 turns casting one spell of progressively higher level. So it's this sort of idea that like, if you go along the if you follow the melody rather than casting whatever level spell is most opportune to you at the time, you get rewarded by having your spells be more efficient. And then there was also like like tempo or rhythm or something like that, where that you would just what was that? That one, I don't remember how that one progressed. But basically it would apply general modifiers to all of your spells. And again, like these are really vague ideas. It would take a lot of work to really like knuckle down and write them into a system for a class, and they'd be fairly complicated. Honestly, my vision of the Bard would make it probably the most complicated class to play in the entire game, because it's not just firing off spells. You've got these 3 other tracks you have to manage, like a whole extra mini game that only the Bard plays, in order to sort of represent that your magic is musical in nature. And to really, and I think here's the thing that I've noticed. When you look at like actual play podcasts and broadcasts like, Critical Role or whatnot, what you generally see, and this is not universal, but what you often see is that people who play bards are people who are musically inclined, and they kind of want to represent that. Famously, semi-famously, I guess, who's that YouTuber that does D&D music? Oh my gosh. Oh, I am blanking on the name. Wow, this is embarrassing. Anyways, there's a YouTuber who does D&D style music. She does the is it Anna Pantsu? No, it's not Anna Pantsu. Is it? Oh my gosh, I can't remember who it is now. But they do D&D style music, and they have a sort of representative character that is a tiefling bard. The videos are delightful. I will link to their channel in the description, because I do not remember. I can't. Oh my gosh, I'm blanking on the name, and it's so bad. That's terrible. Anyways, but like I can't help but imagine that when you're actually playing a bard as someone who is musically inclined, and you think, I'm going to get to use my experience with music in my D&D character, and then you find out that no, you actually don't. There's no connection whatsoever between the bard and actual music. All in an effort to prevent this perceived problem of the bard being forced to be musical. I think that the bard would benefit from having a stronger identity, and making it explicitly musical would be a good way to do that. So if I were redesigning the bard, I would make it more musical. Now, as to what sorts of spells it does, famously, the bard doesn't really have any damaging spells, like not good damaging spells. And its control spells tend to be sort of in the enchantment and charm and illusion kind of realms. And that's fine, I guess. I would probably find more ways to create a more versatile spell list for the bard, so that it is not like, because right now it is the lowest of the A tier, but it's the lowest of the full casters. I shouldn't constantly refer to them as A tier. That is detracting from the point. The point is that it is the weakest of the full casters, largely for the reason that, like, it only has control and support spells, really. And not the good ones either. It does not have the good control spells, because those are, wizard spells. So what I would do is I would take another look at the bard's spell list. And like I said, you would need to have a pretty much unique spell list, because they all have to refer to your various tracks that you're managing and gain explicit bonuses based on where you are on those tracks. And so while doing so, I'd make sure that the bard has the versatility necessary to really fulfill its identity as a sort of jack of all trades, but with a focus on party support, because I do think that the bard should be a primarily party support kind of a caster. But being purely party support doesn't really work in this edition, so probably try to limit that. But that's how I would redesign the bard. Make it more explicitly musical. Give it a little sub game of like managing these tracks for like how your music is going, your volume, your melody, and your rhythm. And then like your subclasses, like some subclasses could even add an additional track that is now important to you. Like backup vocals, like suddenly now your vocals are important, and I don't know how that would manifest necessarily, but that could be really cool. So that's how I would redesign the bard. Not out of any sort of need per se, but I think it would be a more satisfying class to play, particularly for those who have musical background as players. I think they would be more satisfied with the bard if it appealed specifically to their experiences.